Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into it. All right, folks, it finally happened. A former Vol player has called out South Carolina, and you can read the headline. Yep, it was only a matter of time before one of our key players would say something. And, of course, Joe played in that game. He would have a pretty good feel on it. But as you know, I never bury the lead. There are multiple stories out there. Joe Milton claims South Carolina cheated during upset win over Tennessee with help of infamous villain.
I wonder who that can be.
Yeah, I wonder who that could be. And it says in the story, it's the first time a player has issued such a definitive statement about what might have happened. And on Joe Milton's Instagram, as you can see right here, South Carolina, they were celebrating their big win over Tennessee. He said, y'all cheated. That's at Princeton Fant, who is also a former player at Tennessee. Now, obviously, this theory has been growing and growing over the years since 2022. See, we didn't know Connor Stallions was up there stealing signs like crazy, and we had no idea the depth of it, that he actually had scouts out going out to games. He was buying tickets for the games themselves, and not just his opponents, well, Michigan's opponents, that he was going so far as to try to derail teams that could get in the way of Michigan making the playoff. Now, back then, there was only 4 spots, and Michigan had a very weak schedule that year. Their strength of schedule was terrible. And Connor was concerned that if they lost against Ohio State in their final game, they always play at noon, that they'd be knocked out of that 4-team playoff because you had 2 teams that had 1 loss each. One was Clemson and, of course, Tennessee. Tennessee that year had the number 2 strength of schedule. They had beaten Alabama, LSU, Florida. And they were sitting pretty if they win their last 2 games against South Carolina and Vanderbilt. And they were favored by like 24 points against South Carolina. Carolina had just come off of a couple of really rough games against Missouri and Florida where they only scored 16 points, 1 touchdown, 3 field goals in 2 ball games. So their offense was sputtering. It was awful. And so it didn't look so good for South Carolina. Tennessee had the number 1 offense in the country at the time. And also Clemson had only had 1 loss, and they were sitting pretty too. Well, it turns out that Connor had scouted not only Tennessee, but Clemson, Georgia, and a few others. And he had scouted the Kentucky game, which was a couple of weeks before the South Carolina game. And it just so happens that Shane Beamer had bragged about how they would reach out to coaching staffs and share information, etc. And actually, Shane Beamer acknowledged in 2022, weeks before playing Tennessee, that he speaks with coaches from other teams about tendencies, communication, etc. And here it says, Beamer discussed at length his habit, practice of connecting with other coaches. And he said, when we play opponents that we don't play again, usually try and connect with those coaches, see what you had on us, see what we had on you, you know, non-conference teams, things like that. We've done that often. And it was such a strange game. South Carolina winds up scoring 9 straight touchdowns, something South Carolina has never done. Certainly not against another SEC team that had 1 loss. That was 9-1.
9 times?
9 times.
So that, of course, raised a lot of alarm bells, but nobody knew that they could have had our signs.
Allegedly.
So you've got a coach that brags about it. Of course, Connor Stallions went on Bussin' Boys, brags about how he would love to send information to other teams. He would just put it on a different header on the letterhead. That way they wouldn't know it came from Michigan, and he could help derail teams. And he was very proud of that. He had done that multiple times the years before. You know, he was up there for almost a full 3 years. So he was busy. And of course, once he showed up, understand that Jim Harbaugh had lost 24 ball games over about a 6-year span. Once Connor Stallions showed up, in 3 years, they lost 3 ball games.
Are you serious?
They went from 65% winning percentage to 91, I believe it was. It was like the greatest jump you could ever imagine, all because of an assistant. Well, he wasn't even an assistant coach. He was an analyst. So pretty amazing, really. And, of course, we go down the mountain of evidence how Beamer was fined $25,000 for accepting information. A person with direct knowledge, according to Football Scoop, said that Michigan may very well have reached out to a team that could derail a playoff team. And, you know, Here's the interesting thing about that. They beat 2 playoff-bound teams in a row after playing terrible prior to that. And then afterwards, you'd think they'd go on a pretty good run, wouldn't you? Same quarterback, same head coach. I mean, they'd almost have to. Their confidence had to be through the roof. Then they went 2-7. Let me make sure you understand that. Out of the next 9 games, they won 2 after beating 2 playoff-bound teams.
What? Oh no! How terrible! That's just awful. How terrible! Oh no!
Yeah, what happened? And of course, the infamous wristbands that South Carolina decided to wear for the very first time, according to Holly Rowe of ESPN. She reported it. Also, according to Carolina Jackpot, who wants to debate me, and we're going to talk about that at the end of this video. He claims that, oh no, South Carolina was using wristbands before then, etc. I asked AI whether or not South Carolina had done that for the first time. It says in 2022 South Carolina versus Tennessee, a key talking point was the Gamecocks defense wearing wristbands, which they had not done in any other game that season. This unusual occurrence, coupled with South Carolina's surprising offensive performance and subsequent victory, fueled speculation about potential sign stealing and other forms of cheating. And old Connor Stallion says the best thing to do, besides obviously having the offensive play signals, is to have the defensive play signals. Says then you can really rip a defense apart. And that would make sense how a team that only scored 1 touchdown against 2 middle-of-the-road SEC teams, both of which were under 500 that year, could suddenly score 9 straight touchdowns against a playoff-bound team. Pretty shocking, really. Now, if you'll remember, this was discussed by Hendon Hooker, who was obviously the starting quarterback in that game. And Outkick on Hot Mic had actually talked about it. I had shown y'all that when it came out, but here's just a little minute and a half of Hendon Hooker being asked about it.
There's reports that, and we know that Michigan and Connor Stallions bought tickets to Tennessee games to scout you guys as a possible college football playoff opponent or someone ahead of Michigan in those standings. There's also some insinuation that something may have been given to South Carolina based on their performance against you guys and Clemson in back-to-back weeks, 2 teams that Michigan scouted. Was anything off in that game? I know it was the first time they ever wore armbands on defense. Did you sense anything different that night as you guys were playing South Carolina?
I mean, they came to play that day. We just, could keep up with them in the scoreboard, factor. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe that they might have had it or they didn't. We still got to come out there and compete at a high level. And we didn't get the job done. So, it still falls on us whether they had them or not. But it was still great to be able to go out there and compete at a high level. I had fun that game, leading up to the injury, but it was he say, she say. Not really worried, if they did or if they didn't. We didn't finish the job. So
yeah. So Hendon doesn't know. There's no way to know. Joe obviously thinks they did. I certainly do. Look, I cannot prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, unless Connor Stallions comes out or somebody from South Carolina admits it, we're not going to know 100% for sure. And Connor has refused to cooperate with the NCAA. That's why I think he's probably going to get a minimum of a 10-year show cause, maybe a lifetime ban. I think Jim Harbaugh will probably get a lifetime ban because he completely refused to cooperate with the NCAA.
Never lie, never cheat, never steal. I was raised with that lesson.
They've got all kinds of issues at Michigan. I certainly think their head coach, SHERRONE Moore, is going to get a 4-game suspension, probably a 1-year show cause, because he erased a bunch of, I think, 51 text messages from Connor Stallions. And then we're going to find out if a head coach can coach with a show cause. We don't know that. I think Michigan's probably going to get a 2-year bowl ban, if I had to guess, and they may lose their natty. I don't know. That is very much up in the air. It's going to bring, I tell you, Charlie Baker, be ready for some smoke if you take away that natty. Now, in the past, they definitely would have vacated every single win that Connor was on the sidelines, including the Central Michigan game where he was on the sideline. Crafty little guy. And they would lose the natty. But it's 2025. who knows? That's we'll certainly find that out. If that happens, look out. Michigan's going to lose it, their fan base anyway. So that may be more smoke than Charlie Baker wants. But the 2-year postseason ban and probably a $25 million fine, if I had to guess, South Carolina, they may get to skate on this because there's just not enough definitive proof, even though there is a mountain of circumstantial evidence that stacks as high as you can see. Now we've got a former player that finally calls it out. I promise you, he's not the only one that thinks that. It was funny how every single time that South Carolina lined the ball up, they seemed to always be in the perfect play against our defense. It was almost magical. Maybe it was magical in a way, because we know Connor is a magic man. But, I do want to talk to you about Carolina Jackpot, who's been calling me out. As you know, I asked all of you in the comment section to tell me whether or not I should debate him or not. And y'all answered, and most of you said, yes, you should debate him. And as you know, I call this channel the Burger King channel for a reason.
Girls. Ooh, hold the pickle, hold the lettuce, special order donuts, bread, and all we ask is that you let us serve it your way.
All right.
That's right. Special orders don't upset us. So I do plan on debating him. However, there is one caveat to that. I've thought about this. Of course, I told you the last time we discussed this that I wish Big Vol Daddy was still with us, because he would have been the perfect moderator to do this, and he would have loved doing it. But unfortunately, he passed, and that's really a shame. It's very sad. But anyway, the ideal thing to do here, you want a moderator. You need to have that for a debate. If you've ever watched a debate, you know that. And we need somebody that's kind of, middle of the road, fair guy. He doesn't have to necessarily be neutral, but at least be fair. And I'm thinking of somebody like a Pigskin Pete, or maybe even I don't know, maybe a TJ Pittenger of College Football Addiction. I don't know if he'd want to fool with this or not. He'd be perfect. Super fair guy. If you've ever watched College Football Addiction, it's a great channel. But somebody along those lines to handle the debate. And that way it's on a neutral channel, it's a neutral moderator, and he and I can hash this out, and I think it'd be pretty entertaining, honestly. So I think that would be the fair way to do this, is just have a moderator and put it on a neutral channel, and we could build it up and see who comes out on top on the debate. It should be fun. Like I said, I've got unlimited circumstantial evidence. I just wish I had somebody admitting it. That's probably never going to come. But anyway, he wants to debate it, and that's fine. I don't have any problem with the South Carolina fan wanting to defend South Carolina. That's perfectly fine. I think that's reasonable, and we can certainly do that. But that's my answer. Yes, I will debate him if he's willing to do it on a neutral YouTube channel with a moderator. That way it's fair for everybody, and nobody can complain afterwards and go, oh, well, I got blindsided or whatever, And by the way, that's nothing against Rob, who is on Jackpot's channel a lot. He seems like a good football knowledge guy. But anyway, they're kind of partners, so it would probably almost be 2 against 1. Although, I don't know, he might be pretty fair. But anyway, it just needs to be on a neutral YouTube channel. That way nobody can say, no Tennessee fans can say, oh, it wasn't fair, and no South Carolina fans can say it wasn't fair if it was on my channel and I had somebody moderate. It's a buddy of mine.
Logical.
Anyway, that's my answer on that. So Jackpot, you're out there. I know you're watching it. You're probably delivering your potato chips. You're the potato chip baron of South Carolina, selling those Utz chips, which if you've ever watched this channel, I actually did a taste test on those, and I'd never, ever tasted Utz chips in my life. I just assumed they were not very good. They were ridiculously good. It's maybe the best potato chip I've ever had. And look, if they stunk, I would tell you that.
He ain't lying.
Really good chips. But anyway, I think it would be a good debate and might be very entertaining for the viewers. So Big Joe calls it out. It was only a matter of time. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know continue to cover all these big college sports stories. If you've not subscribed, boom, boom, boom. Hit that button right there. It won't cost you a dime. Help you get my videos. And right over here is the most recent video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.
I'm just curious. I saw you shuffling your checks with your right hand. Can you do that with both hands?
No.
Can't do it with both hands?
No, sir.